That's not who we were waiting for, but hey, Tom. All right, you ready? Good evening. This is a statement regarding the officer-involved shooting of Jabril Conley. On 9/19/2024, members of the New Haven Police Department's Violent Crime Task Force were contacted by the ATF about an outstanding federal warrant. The ATF were attempting to locate Jabril Conley, date of birth 6/22/88, who they knew had an outstanding arrest warrant on federal charges. He was indicted by a grand jury on 9/17 of this year and wanted for interference with commerce by robbery and carrying, using, discharging a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence. Conley is a known member of the Grape Street Crips and is on federal probation and has an extensive criminal history. Members of the task force are a combination of officers and detectives from the New Haven Police Department, the Connecticut State Police, and other municipalities in the area. While they do not wear uniforms, they do wear vests and badges displayed on which the word police is plainly visible. They were all wearing body cameras that day. They were able to determine the car that Conley was suspected of driving and determined via license plate readers that it was around Kimberly Avenue and El Grasso Boulevard. Just before 5 p.m., they located the vehicle pulled front first into the parking spot at the vacuum area of Splash Car Wash, 2 Boston Post Road in West Haven, with Conley standing next to the vehicle, the driver's door open, and no other occupants of the vehicle. As officers converged on him, Conley entered the vehicle while officers were ordering him out of the car at gunpoint. He put his vehicle in reverse and struck a police car, which was directly behind him. Conley then reached for a handgun and pointed it at officers. He appeared to fire 1 round as officers in the initial inspection of the handgun by the Office of Inspector General suggest that the gun jammed after firing that 1 round. Sergeant Frank Sanchez, Officer Michael Valente, CSP Sergeant Colin Richter returned fire, striking Conley. Officers immediately radioed for an ambulance and the New Haven Fire Department to respond. They performed, the officers on scene, life-saving measures until the arrival of AMR. Conley was transported to Yale New Haven Hospital, where he was later pronounced deceased. The Connecticut State Police, along with the Officer Inspector General, responded and assumed responsibility for the investigation per state law. Sergeant Sanchez and Officer Valente are currently on paid administrative leave during this investigation. Just want to make a couple notes. This is a very rare occurrence in New Haven. Our last officer-involved shooting that related in death was in November of 2004. Based on the information, the preliminary status report, and the body camera footage, I believe our officers used appropriate force in this situation to protect themselves, their fellow officers, and the public. But this is still an ongoing investigation. As you can see from the body camera footage, the officers put themselves between Conley with a handgun and other innocent people that were in the parking lot. We believe that it was very brave what they did, and they had to fire to prohibit themselves from being shot or anybody else in the immediate area. We're lucky we're not burying officers. When you watch the footage, you'll see Sergeant Sanchez trying to go hands-on and pull Conley from the vehicle. At that point, you see the window of the driver's side shattered. That is Conley firing a shot. We're very lucky that officers were not hurt or anybody else. After the original shooting incident, we received information that there were threats being made by members of the Grape Street Crips to call in other members of the Grape Street Crips, specifically from the New Jersey area, to do harm to our officers. My staff and I immediately doubled up the officers and made sure that they are safe. We have since come to the conclusion that this may have only been rhetoric. We don't have anything to back it up. So after tonight, we will be going back to 1-person cars. But if anything comes out that leads us to believe this, we will of course, do everything we can to protect our officers and the community. I have spoken directly with Conley's mother, and I have spoken directly with Conley's brother, DeVell Conley. DeVell has assured me that there was no message to hurt officers and that people don't want to hurt officers. So that was reassuring, and I appreciate them talking to us about that. Sergeant Sanchez has 12 years of experience with the New Haven Police Department, and he's a decorated officer. Officer Valente has 11 years of experience with the New Haven Police Officer, and also been a very good officer. They will remain on administrative leave until we hear back from the Inspector General's office. I wanted to thank all the officers that responded that night. Our federal partners, the ATF resident agent in charge is here, Scott Reardon. Thank you, Scott, and all your people. And everybody performed and did what they had to do. We don't want to do this. We don't want to shoot people. It's very unfortunate, but the officers did what they had to do, and we support them. I also wanted to thank the union, who was there right on scene right away, and the union president, Florencio Cotto. We do send our condolences to the family, but we support our officers who were put in a position to do this. So I'm going to let the mayor speak, and then we'll take some questions.
Thanks, Chief. Good evening, everybody. I wanted to first thank the Chief for your leadership and your hard work during this time. Also want to thank the Inspector General's office, who's been proactive in the investigation. Just a reminder of the process. As the Chief said, we do not conduct the investigation for officer-involved shootings. The Inspector General's office, as the state statute outlines, because of the Police Accountability Bill, conducts the investigation. And they are required within the first 96 hours to release this preliminary status report and body camera footage that you have seen. And I have seen the same body cam footage that they released around 5 p.m. This evening. The investigation will continue, and it could potentially last 9 months, a year. They do it thoroughly, and as you can imagine, we're all anxious for them to pursue the investigation, to see the outcome. But I think that when people see the body cam footage, it tells a lot about what happened on last Thursday evening. We're very fortunate that the officers are okay. And when you look at the officers that were in an incredibly dangerous situation, and as the Chief said, warning the subject, and the subject pulled out a gun and appears to have fired it before the officers. It was a very, very dangerous situation, and we were grateful that the officers are okay. I am not an expert. I'm not a police officer, but it appears to me that the officers used appropriate force. It appears to me that Mr. Conley fired first. It appears that the officers' lives were in danger. No officer wants this to happen. It is deeply unfortunate that Mr. Conley has died. No officer wants this to happen, but these are unbelievably difficult situations that our officers put themselves in the line of fire to help keep our community safe. When you think about it, this Violent Crimes Task Force over the last 4 or 5 years has taken more than 1,000 guns off the street. 1,000 guns off the street in scenarios, some of which are similar to this one. The officers are putting themselves out there and having a significant amount of impact on our community to keep our community safe. I again will echo the Chief's comments and my previous comments that we express condolences to Mr. Conley's family, and again are very grateful that our officers are safe. I'll hand it back to the Chief for questions.
Any questions?
Chief and Mayor, you both said that Mr. Conley appeared to fire the first shot. After having reviewed the body cam footage, do you think there's any ambiguity as to whether or not he fired the first shot, or are you saying appeared because it's still being investigated?
No, I mean, watch it yourself. I mean, that's what I'm going to say, because, and we're not investigating this, right? But as you watch it, we are not firing shots until you'll see Sergeant Sanchez standing there trying to pull him from the car, and a shot is fired and shatters the window right next to Sergeant Sanchez in the direction of Sergeant Sanchez. No other officer fires until that happens. That's, to me, a clear evidence that he fired first. And then, of course, the Inspector General was able to inspect the gun that Conley had, and it was fired. That gun was also a stolen gun out of Waterbury, and it had an extended mag on it, magazine, which it had the capacity to hold 26 rounds.
Could you tell us again what Mr. Conley was being terms of what exactly?
It was a robbery shooting. He had robbed somebody and shot them. I have the front page of the arrest warrant, which Scott has said that we can release, so I'll have Christian put this out.
Was that
Scott. Okay. It wasn't in New Haven.
how many police officers were there? So 3 fired?
Yeah, so that was another point, if asked. There were 11 officers on scene and only 3 fired. They definitely stuck with their training. The car backs up into police cars. They don't fire. He points a weapon at them. They don't fire. He fires a weapon, and then only 3 fire because the 3 that fire saw the threat and saw directly what was going on, right? The other officers that weren't in a position to fire didn't fire. And I'm very proud of that because they restrained and some of these police shootings, you see numerous shots fired. This wasn't the case. Only 3 officers fired who were in a position to fire and saw the threat.
2 police officers.
Yeah, 2 New Haven and then the 1 Connecticut trooper, sorry.
Was the task force, was that work continuing after the shooting, or was that paused following the shooting?
The task force itself?
Yeah.
Well, we gave the entire group a break, right? They got to comprehend this and they need mental health and they need things that we need to give them. But they will be returning.
Is there any accounting for how many shots were fired on the site by the evading officers?
I'm going to let the Inspector General say that.
Are the city police conducting any internal investigations? What happened?
Yes, I've opened an internal affairs investigation, which is standard protocol for an officer-involved shooting.
I know that Sergeant Sanchez was involved in an officer-involved shooting and shot and injured a man back in January 2019 in Kingsley Square. I don't know if-
Yes, after the man shot at him, he returned fire. That was the incident, yes.
that Officer Valenti shot and injured anyone.
No.
How many of the 11 officers there were New Haven police officers versus state police?
7 New Haven officers, and then the task force also has a North Haven officer, an Orange officer, the sergeant who's a Connecticut State Police.
Did Conley have any connection to the counterfeit pill investigation out of the stadium that came up today?
I don't believe so, but I don't know for sure.
Has there been any substantiated threat in regards to the Green Street crypt? And you mentioned that they were upset with the police.
Yeah, I mean, we got some chatter about that and we've been monitoring it, but we haven't substantiated it. We believe it's just street talk to the point where we're going to move our officers to 1-person cars. And I was assured by his brother that that's not what they want to do or going to do. So, I'm not just taking his word for it, but it was very good that he actually called. I called him first. I know him. I've arrested him. I've offered his services through Project Longevity. So we know each other, right? So I called him and said my condolences. And I told him he had a gun in his hand and he fired first. And then he called me back to tell me that that whole claim was BS and that wasn't really going on. So I appreciate that from him. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much.